Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gene Maneri. I'm the co-founder of the Ella Project. We're a legal assistance business development organization based in New Orleans, Louisiana. My co-founder, Ashley Keaton, is also on the call. It's good to see Ashley, and it's good to see all of y'all. We've got a really great panel today of jeweler Chester Allen, woodworking team of David and Tiffany Bergeron, and a metalworking team. And it is a team because Suzanne and Andre Juneau are joining us today. And so we're thrilled to have both of them in studio, as they say. So they're sitting with me down here at my office on Esplanade Avenue in New Orleans. We're going to get going relatively soon. What I'd ask you all to do, if you have questions, go ahead and use the chat box that you can find at the bottom of the screen. And my current Zoom iteration, for whatever reason, it's actually moved over into the three dots at the right of the screen as opposed to right in the middle. That may be the same for you, it may not. Either way, if you have questions, ask them in the chat. We'll catch up if there's something that we've missed on a topic, but we're going to hold time for the end for all y'all's stuff to get answered as well. Since we are recording, please stay on mute. If you're not on mute and you shift your chair around, the camera moves to you. It doesn't give us a clean recording. And of course, we want a clean recording. I'm going to try to do this poll really quickly before we do introductions, and then people can sort of vote on that as we go. Let's see, how do we launch this poll? You know what? I'm not going to worry about the poll. We're going to do it with, if y'all can use the reaction button that you find, and you're going to see a recognize hand gesture. I'm going to ask, we want to get an idea of how long people have been doing this, or if they've been doing it at all. So what I'd like is for y'all to use that reactions hand raise button if you've never done art fair or craft show outside your home market before, and if y'all can vote now. All right, we're seeing several thumbs up and votes coming in. We've got about 4 of those. Now, what if you've done maybe 1 to 5 events outside of your home market? Could you now raise your hand for that? All right, we got about 1 or 2 of those. What about like 5 to 15 events outside your home market? Can we get hand raises for those? All right, now we're starting to populate. Okay. All right, and then let's say 15 or more events outside your home base. Yeah, our panelists for sure. One of the things is when we go around, we're going to see how many events these people have done, and it's a lot. Okay, so it looks like that we're probably in, a solid number have never done it before. But then we do have probably at least the bare majority that have done at least a handful before. So I think that's great, and I think that'll help us orient the conversation. So I'm going to be leading us through, and I have questions for our panel, but first I want to bring them in and introduce themselves, and we're going to do it alphabetically by last name. So I'm going to start with Mr. Chester Allen. Chester, come in, tell us about yourself. And one of the other questions I want you all to answer in your introductory section is, I know that all of y'all have multiple ways that you get your work to the public, whether through galleries, whether through commissions. But what made you decide that you wanted to start showing in shows outside your home market? So tell us about yourself, and then if you can answer that question, please.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chester Allen. I'm a philosopher with a ball-peen hammer. So we can examine that if you like, but I do think it is important to know who you are and then who you're looking for to create the market. My work is shown at Ariadante Gallery on Camp and Julia in the Warehouse District. I have my work online, Shopify and an Etsy shop. And then I have work that's been shown at shows throughout the country for probably about 40 years.
Excellent. Let's bring in David and Tiffany Bergeron.
Hey guys, David Bergeron, woodworker. To play off of what Chester said, I guess I'm a monkey with a saw, and kind of been working in my medium since 1999. Started traveling to do shows maybe about 5, 6 years into it, and have been traveling ever since. And we try to hit all the wholesale website, all the stuff you got to do to maintain a business. Um, we kind of focus on sustainability. That's our driving goal. And here to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. Tiffany, you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi, everyone. And Jean, thank you for having me. I'm Tiffany Bergeron. I don't have a title, but I do all the non-creative support for Bergeron Woodworks. So think of exciting things like taxes, registration, accounting, logistics planning, returning emails, all the things my partner in life and business partner don't find interesting. I actually do. So that's my role there. And, why do we do it is Dave and I both share passion for both design and sustainability, which really drives our company.
Thank you, Tiffany. And moving to my friends sitting here in the studio, Andre and Juneau.
Hey there, I'm jealous of you guys with that single title. That feels really nice right now. Let's see, President of Louisiana Crafts Guild, which I hope you guys all are members. And if you're not, come check out our website, louisianacrafts.org. I make stuff. I've been going to shows out of state since I was 3 months old with my mom, who is also on the call here. Done a few other things in my life in between too. I did some back of the napkin math a second ago while somebody was saying how many shows they've been to. I think I've been to 1,000 shows, but that's real. Make big stuff out of aluminum, use a CNC plasma cutter every day. I have a lot of fun doing that.
Suzanne Juneau.
Let's see, I have been doing this since 1970, I'd say 1 or 2, can't remember. Graduated from college in 70 and was looking for a creative outlet. So not a lot of space, started making jewelry. That was always fun. And I've always considered myself a person who likes to create and make something new, something different. It can just be a very small difference, but every piece is different. That makes me have a good time. I enjoy it. Gone to craft shows all over the United States. Tugged Andre along with me the whole time. One of the founding members of Louisiana Crafts Guild, and I'm so glad that he has become the president. And I am the membership chair at this moment, and hopefully everybody will want to be a member. We love our organization, and I think it's a great support for all craftsmen. Please join us if you get a chance.
All right, thank you guys. Okay, so what we talked about is that we were going to go through this kind of in a chronological idea of concept to completion. And so I think let's start with the concept. When you guys are looking to participate in a show, or just generally when you decided to do this in your career, what do you see as the goals there? What are the reasons that one would do this, and what are the things that you would look at specifically for your own work when choosing what to do with a craft show? Anyone can start, but if nobody wants to start first, I'm going to start with Chester.
Hey. Well, I very seldom do anything linearly, but sometimes it's been by like me coming up with an idea of something that I want to express, and then generally there might be an area that's more acceptable, than others. Sometimes it's about the fact that this is supposed to be one of the better shows in the country, and you know, it's an opportunity where people are engaged in terms of something that might be a little bit more different or interesting. And then, I mean, there's the financial considerations of like in going the distance, and you know, what condition you know my car is in, and those kind of things. So there are a lot of variables to think about, and I really think of this almost like a Rubik's Cube, where you have elements that okay, on one hand this is a good idea, on the other, and you need backup plans to the backup plans. I know all of us this time of year get a lot of applications in where we're waitlisted, or we're in or we're out, and so you know, there isn't one right way. When that comes along, you just got to say this is supposed to happen, and be excited and go for whatever that is.
Excellent. Well, you mentioned the applications. Let's talk about that, because you know, when we were doing sort of a pre-meeting, I said, oh, you know, well, what about the shows you choose to apply to? And all of y'all were like, well, slow down. What about the shows you can get into? And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about, especially in the early days, like getting applications ready, what your success rate, even at a experience level, looks like, and other tips that you would have for people when diving into this. Let's let the Juneau start.
Okay, my thing is, number one, everyone's gonna judge whatever you present to them by the images you have. And those images need to be the best you can possibly get. I cannot say that I have that. I take my own pictures because I am too cheap. But if you have access to a great photographer, or you want to pay for a great photographer,
It is some
It-
very well spent money.
it is the best spent money that you will have. I mean, you can put off doing a website, you can put off doing a whole lot of things that cost a bunch of money, but those photographs, whether you use them on Etsy, whether you use them, however you use
Zap.
them on Zapplication, of course, we don't, first of all, you need to say, you're going to begin an application by registering on Zapplication. It is a foundation, is part of the West Staff, which is Western Arts Federation. They founded this application form about 20 years ago now. And pretty much most art shows list on applications. Some don't, but it's very, very few. And once you have that application filled out for its application, you'll notice that there is a population point of, I think, 100, or maybe it's more than that, images that you can put on that you can use. So put everything that you can get on there, and that way you can judge yourself. It's very hard to pick sometimes, but use the best images that portray your work, but make sure that those images also are very cohesive. That's the second thing. Every juror is looking for a cohesive set of images. Anybody else?
I was gonna add to that, your booth shot has not as much value
lots.
as that,
Lots.
but sometimes more.
Yes.
Many a decision is getting made by how good the booth shot is.
We were just in Houston, and one of the things on the show paperwork said they were coming around with our booth images and comparing our booth to the image that we had sent them.
And certain shows, like when we went to Florida a couple of weeks ago, it was very apparent they were going for an aesthetic.
Yes.
But like it was very clear that the work wasn't being judged, the booth was being judged, which I
Exactly.
don't approve of, but some places that's the case.
Wow.
And to cater to that is very helpful.
Everything at that show, everything was so monolithic. I don't know how to say
Everybody
it.
had one thing they made,
One thing, and
whether
it
it be a
had,
clock or a phone
Yeah.
charger or baskets, they did one thing.
the next guy to us had ceramic lamps, so he had every size and color of his ceramic lamps. And then I've forgotten who was on the other side. She had paintings and hers were something, but that's how the whole show was.
And I don't want to make you think that every show is like that, but some bigger shows are like that.
Yes.
And maybe that's something to plan in a booth shot for certain events.
And also make sure that those shots that you are sending them are cohesive. All the images are very much similar.
If you can have stuff in your booth that go with the shots you're put, very helpful.
Mhm.
Bergeron,
Jean.
go ahead, yeah, jump in.
Yeah, I thought maybe I would just add a couple of things to what Suzanne and Andre were talking about. First of all, considerations to think about. The average fee to apply to a show is it's around $35 to $45, with it kind of topping out at $145 with the application fees just to apply. And then the average
yesterday.
What's that?
I saw a $50 one the other day. I was looking at applications that was
She said
due on the first.
145, not
Oh,
50.
$145. I'm sorry. I was just talking about the application fee is $50.
No, she's
Yeah.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yes. So just that's the first consideration. Second, average booth costs are between $500 and $2,000. So just to kind of start there, it's expensive to apply to 10 shows each spring and 10 shows each fall. So just keeping that in mind. And the reason we started doing shows out of town was because we saturated the New Orleans market. I mean, people knew they could find us. They knew they would come by the either Bywater Art Market or the New Orleans Art Market and say, "Hey, oh, we can see you next weekend" or something. So we knew we had to start expanding. But the pictures are super important, and just to start in your radius, like. Try Three Rivers in Covington, try Ocean Springs, try Pass Christian. There's a few shows that are in the region that you can try, and then start to branch out to Bayou City in Houston, to Greater Gulf Coast in Pensacola. I mean, I would just try. Like, we didn't go to New York the first time we did a show.
Yeah, that's the point that I kind of wanted to hit on, is that, to get in the rhythm of doing these shows, especially when you're starting out traveling for shows, like, as opposed to swinging for the home run with Cherry Creek or these monsters, like, there's a lot of decent shows you can get one night in a hotel and just do a show in Gulfport. Like, that kind of hones the practice and the mentality of prepping for a show, making sure you have all your stuff without everything being on the table for a big expense of traveling to Chicago or being gone for a week and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of decent shows within a day's drive from here that you could start out with. And that's sort of what we did until we got into a show that was in Chicago. And that was our first big foray. And can we do this? And that actually went really well, luckily. And then it's like, wow, what else could we do? But we did a lot of shows on the Gulf Coast, just honing that in.
And when we talk about some of those selections, and I love the idea of starting, relatively close by, to keep expense down, and also, to just sort of get your sea legs, as they might say. But when looking at other things outside of maybe, it's less than 90 minutes from my house. I know when we were talking the other day, Chester and Andre, all y'all, but especially you two, had some clever ideas on sort of some market research you could do, some things that you could try and look up online that could help determine if, your work might go well in those communities.
You're looking at me.
I am.
So I'm gonna add a little bit to the Bergerons before that. A rough rule of thumb is your booth fee should be about 10% of what you should expect, assuming everything goes well. So those shows are a lot more expensive. You would expect to sell more, so keep that in mind. That's a decent one. I had success for a long time using PlugShare, which is a electric car charging sharing application, where I would look around and see where that shows where I was looking at were near a bunch of shared chargers, because you knew that those were wealthy liberal people who were welcoming people into their house. And I've found as a whole, if I go to a good show, there's 30 or 40 within walking distance. And that's always kind of a fun little back check to those things where you're like, maybe that's a decent way to look at it. Talking to other artists is always good. If you can talk to somebody who's been to a show, especially somebody who's been repeatedly and sees your work and sees other work that have done well at that show. And if you're similar, a lot of times that's a good sign. The other thing I think we said was just being at any show away from your home market presents yourself to a new group of people. In that new group of people, there'll be show promoters, other artists that might run shows. You might run into somebody else who recommends you to something else. Somebody among us said that they've gotten into shows, and I'm sure we have too, where that you've been rejected from a show, and then you meet the person from that show, and they go, "Why aren't you at my show?" And then you go, "Well, because you didn't let me in." And then they go, "Oh, this doesn't look anything like the pictures you sent me. Why didn't you say so?" And you go, "Oh." So just appearing in front of people away from home is super helpful for all of those things.
Chester, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the ideas I brought to the table was, again, this is back to knowing who you are. When I would go to an area, I'm looking for an independent bookstore, a health food store, preferably with wheatgrass, and maybe an old record shop. And this tends to be people who are open thinkers, and that sort of fits in line with my work. Also, I'd mentioned the universities like Ann Arbor, State Street, and Central Pennsylvania tend to have that group of people.
Mhm. Yeah.
I want to throw something in just because I know it's a counterculture to what everybody said there, which I'm not surprised at. But like the idea, I think, of where you go has a lot to do with what it is you're doing. My work tended to be of an eclectic but somewhat contemporary nature. And so me going to Mississippi or Alabama because they're closer may not be hitting upon, I need to get different eyes on my work. And the other thing I was thinking about when Dave mentioned like Chicago, you have places that like in the history of those places, they made things, you had the steel mills and things like that in Pittsburgh or Chicago. And I think you have people who are engaged about, oh, you make this, like what that is. And then, like I said, some areas are very like almost like a corporate nature, even around where the show is. And if that maybe fits what you're doing, then that might be good. But I think you should look at places that are maybe have an eclectic mix when you're not sure yet even what you're developing in your artwork, so that you can see what are people drawn to different people and go from there. But I find the Midwest and the East Coast are places that people are knowledgeable about these things. There's a history with art fairs going way back. And so I'll definitely think everyone should consider those two areas in particular.
And Andre, you want to get back in?
Vacation homes, second home areas, I do particularly well, second and third homes. So like at Jazz Fest or someplace like that, I do fantastic with people from DC, Virginia. And then I'll go to DC or Virginia, I'll see the actual same people. And they go, "I love the piece I bought from you at Jazz Festival." I've got everything I want. And then they'll see him again at their vacation home in Florida, and they'll buy something from you there. So the idea of catching those people on vacation, a lot of times is an amazing opportunity. And they'll be like, "Oh, can you send it to my DC house?" And you're like, "I was just there. I was just there."
Yeah, I agree. I think tourism too is another avenue to think about because as a tourist, you're looking for a souvenir to take home. And a lot of times tourists happen upon an art show and they're looking for something they can put in their suitcase They may have you ship it. I mean, if it's something real special, we've shipped things because people have seen it and they decide that's what they want.
And we sell a lot of things for people who are on vacation to give to their person that watched their house or
course.
their whatever,
All
just
the
dealing with their
things.
business
Yeah.
while they're away on vacation too.
Yeah. And I will say, even at the galleries, you know, both
Absolutely.
galleries,
Both.
we sell to tourists. Yes.
Both in Lafayette and New Orleans,
Both, yes.
for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would
So,
say, I would add that, you know, on all this stuff, show selection and whatnot. I mean, one thing that gets overlooked is the power of networking in this chosen business that we're doing. And, you know,
Agreed.
talking to your neighbors, asking them where they're going next and what shows work for them. And we kind of overlook that because we're all quote unquote independents. But there's the power of networking is huge, and just being a good neighbor at a show, and you never know, that person breaking down all of a sudden says, "Oh, I'm on the board of another show," or there's this little show that I do that nobody does. That's a great show, and we've all found those little odd shows that get overlooked and turn out to be really good for us. You know, so it's, you know, there are a lot of opportunities not in the big name shows per se, but networking all the time.
excellent, excellent. So we figured out the show we want to get into. We've got good images. We've applied to the show. We've gotten in. Yeah. Now, as Tiffany mentioned, you know, we've laid out a significant cash outlay ahead of time. And we're going to have to figure out how to get to the show, get all our stuff to the show, get our display to the show. And, you know, and ideally minimize expenses along that road, because we're not making any money till we get set up, right? So what are some things that y'all have been able to do to try and make that work, to figure out, you know, and I'm sure this was something that probably didn't happen overnight, but figuring out like what inventory looked like, what you wanted to bring, how you could do, you know, sort of amateur travel agent tips, booth display, all that stuff. What do people need to know about those things? Bergeron, why don't you start?
Oof, I'll defer that to Tiff since she does all the travel planning part. Inventory is always hard for me personally. You know, what know, because you never know what's going to be hot. So yeah, I don't really have a bunch of tips, just because we're always struggling as to what to bring, how much to bring. I always want to bring too much, and Tiff's always telling me to dial it back. But you know, that's a hard one. Inventory is a real challenge. Tiff does well on the travel stuff though.
Yeah, so we do have data that we look at. And so, Dave, we do talk about these things. We know over the course of years how much we sell. And so, when Dave wants to bring our entire shop and studio, I remind him these are the numbers, this is what's previously happened. But it all starts like getting a car. Can your car make it? In our early days, we didn't always have that luxury of the knowing that we could actually get there and with everything. So can your tent fit in your car? Can your tent and all your inventory fit in your car? How do you travel? So we travel, we use the same hotel so we can get our points, so we can use our points. So sometimes we're paying for hotels, sometimes we're staying on points. So always trying to maximize any kind of bonuses or rewards we can get. It's super helpful. I mean,
Can I ask you on that? Has that changed for you in the last, I don't know, say 5 years? It seems like there's all this new technology, and I mean, the idea of going to the front desk and asking for a price is not really it anymore. So
yeah. So thanks for that. No, we use one hotel brand that we maximize. So anytime we need an option, but like I also play all the games. So Hotels Tonight, you know, I use them for the little boutique, you know, off the main chain thing. Hotels.com, they're really simple. Stay, I think it's 5 nights, you get the 6th night free. Really simple math. You don't have to be brand loyal. But yeah, it has changed. I mean, Airbnb is an option. We don't actually use Airbnb, but it's certainly an option to try. We kind of got into one hotel brand and accumulated a ton of points. So kind of just stayed within that brand, and there are all kinds of options that that we use. So just trying things out and just trying to maximize. I mean, I'm trying to get as much paid for as I can before we get there. We also do a lot of social media before we get there. So we let people know, we run ads in towns. So if we're going to Denver for Cherry Creek, we'll start running ads for our booth and our setup in Cherry Creek about a month before, just getting people, reminding people that we're headed there, and running ads on Instagram. Things are, it's fairly inexpensive. So we do that for each show that we're doing. We update our website. And then I think the other thing for prep is, look, Dave, we're lucky. There's two of us. Doing a show solo is not the easiest thing. We've been neighbors with Chester many a time. So, making sure he's got water, he can go to the restroom, we can watch his booth. Like, thinking about those things when you're solo is also something to think about in your prep, like making sure you have an ice chest, that you're bringing all of your, enough food and water and all those things. Those are things like to think about when we talk about prep. I hope that was helpful.
Extremely helpful. Chester, a good bridge there. So, Tiffany and David are often doing shows. Andre's oftentimes doing shows with his parents or sisters. He does shows by himself too, but I know that you often do. So, think about just like how maybe that experience is different for the solo versus those that it's sort of an artist couple or team.
Yes, I mean, most of the time I look at it and I marvel at it and think, well, my mom said you can still marry well. At 92, she's still engaged about that. But at the same time, I think there's parts of it which are great because, I'm a Virgo. So I'm in my head about a number of things, and I probably would be driving someone crazy otherwise with, working backwards and thinking, okay, this is a show, and this is an issue that we haven't mentioned yet, but some shows are a day before set up, some are the same day. And those are very different in terms of, how the logistics. So you may want to get something that's like, within walking distance, or, that allows you to go back to the hotel and freshen up, or, that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, again, when I think about it, I have my little list. I was looking at it. I don't really know exactly how to put it on there, but it's my Tiffany, where I kind of look on the side and say, okay, this is the name of the show. This is where you're going, and this, and I think about when I'm driving. I've learned that probably 2 hours is good at most, and then I need to stop. For rest, for rehydration, to relieve myself, all of those things. And so when you think about trying to go somewhere, okay, I'm a morning person. I need to maybe get out early and get down the road. And that there's a point, where I maybe need to shut it down, and so that when you get to the place that you're at your best. And yeah, I mean, when I think back again about the coupling thing, there have been times where I've identified people who are local to an area that, I just count on, that when I'm in, say, Ann Arbor, there's, Joe that I'm going to call up, and he's going to help with the physical setup or tear down. And I do think, as someone who's been reached of a certain age, that it's a real issue that you consider your exercise and stretching and so forth, because there are a lot of us out here who have war wounds from trying to grab kettlebells to weight things, and with what we do in terms of our art, you may get a trigger finger, and then now it's a little difficult to pop that tent. One thing I will say that my experience over the years is people in what we do are just super helpful. And I think if you don't overdo that, you'll find that there are a lot of people out there willing to help you with whatever you need to do.
Sure.
And it's interesting, putting some of our panelists on the spot here. I do think it's interesting that we have two family teams in similar ways on here. And in a lot of ways, I think people could look at that and say that's great, but then it's not for everybody, right? We've often seen other situations where, spouse and artists, it's not actually that cohesive a situation and maybe causing issues that were not related to the show. So
I have seen that.
It's maybe a little bit different experience, just thoughts that you guys may have on that, that you think people would enjoy hearing. Let's start with the Junos.
Okay, let me think for a second, but I can tell you most of the people I'm usually near are single.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Yeah.
As a rule,
as a
most people
rule.
are there by themselves.
By themselves, so I'm always there at saying, if you need anything, there's two of us right here. But a good show should always have booth assistants, volunteers that come around. They will come around and ask you if you need to booth sit, be very kind with those people because they're there. They're not gonna take money, but they are there to sit for you for about 15 minutes so that you can relieve yourself and get some food.
Most places also have a specific phone number set up at their office or home, whatever thing that you can call. And if you're not seeing that it's set up, ask the show director, anybody for their cell phone number, because they will drag somebody over there if you need something.
Definitely, that's very important. The other thing is the ice chest, the water.
Water, and more water.
As much as you can drink, because, I mean, here it's hot, but still, even if you're in the sun, and it is cool, heat stroke is a possibility. You need to always stay hydrated. It's very important. I'm trying to think of other things by yourself.
Be nice to your neighbors.
Exactly.
It goes a long way when you've done something for them and then you need to go to the bathroom or whatever.
Yes.
They're gonna be so much more willing to help you out.
And also, things that we were discussing earlier, that are very, very important is weights on your tent. Make sure, because usually shows are set up in a very windy area. If you're downtown, there are wind tunnels. If you're out in a park, it's an area usually that's kind of windy. Make sure you have 25 pounds per leg on a minimum on each one, some maybe 40, it just depends, because if your booth if it gets windy, you're by yourself, there's no way you're gonna be able to hold on to that tent. And don't think it's just your tent. When that tent blows, it's gonna blow into somebody else's tent. And those tents are gonna go also. So be very careful as far as how you're positioning your weights. Make sure that they're in the right places too, if you feel. I always like to know where the wind is coming from. I will look and see on the Weather Channel, and winds are out of the northwest. I'm trying to decide where to put the most weights, and also my displays of what's not going to blow or blow over, those kind of things. I think that's real important too.
I'm gonna jump back a couple of steps to getting ready to go. Things to bring with you. As far as vehicle, I would say definitely check the air in all 5 tires, make sure they have tread in them, check all the fluids. And then once you load up, drive somewhere 20 miles away from home and drive back. You never know when, because I loaded this thing for the first time in a year, something's gonna give out. And it's much better to have that fail a day before when you're not on the way to the show than at the show. It's super, super inconvenient when you're on the way to a show and you have something fail. So much better to find out a little bit earlier. As far as things you absolutely have to have, never forget that there's Home Depots, Lowe's, and Walmarts in every city in the United States. And you have a credit card and you can go find stuff. So don't over freak on packing everything. Inventory is, like David said, one of the biggest challenges, just trying to guess what you're gonna sell in a new place. Bring a little bit of everything and hope you sell it all, but don't worry if you don't, it's okay. As far as getting along with people, the nicer you can be to your neighbors, holy cow, not blocking their booth, not having your booth blow into them, that is so helpful. Just about everybody in this business is willing to do almost anything for anybody. But if you do one thing to make them upset, it's gone.
Mhm. I will say that when you're at a show too, the worst thing that you always feel very uncomfortable about is if somebody drives up who has a very long truck and then a trailer, and then you have
They
to,
block like 4 booths.
they block like 4 booths, and you have to drive way far over here to be able to unload yours. So if you have one of those setups, figure out how to be one of the last people in or the last people
Or
out.
first, or whatever happens to be
Yes.
when there's not other people
There's
around.
not a lot of people in.
Yeah, that always is super helpful.
Mhm.
Basic consideration always goes a long way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would say like connecting to what Chester said and what you guys just said, like, knowing whether you're a morning person or an afternoon person, like for me personally, I'm a nervous Nelly before a show anyway. And I would usually prefer to take that last setup time because I'd rather people be out of the way. And our stuff's heavy. We got a van that we have to get as close as we possibly can. So yeah, I as a personal for me, because of the way I like to do things, I'd rather be the last person to set up, and let everybody get settled and get their stuff there. And that way I can bring the van in because I'm not I can't really carry my stuff super far. So I want to be as close as I can, and I'll work late. That's not a problem, but that's knowing yourself, maybe you got to get there first and it's going to take you all day, and you have to have a better idea of how long your setup actually takes. But just my 2 cents on that topic.
Not to counter David at all, but if you don't know what you're doing, being early is probably a good idea in case you
For
have
sure. Yeah,
to those run.
Mhm.
for sure.
But if you know what you're doing, yeah, show up right before the show. It's great.
Actually, and I was going to even suggest that, and I found this in my last tour in Florida, it was good to be there a day or two before, especially if it's an area you're not familiar with. Like when I did Mount Dora is one of those places that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of variables about where you're going to put your car, and then also just getting a feel for the people there. If you can just, I think it's simpler when people have like the same setup every time. But honestly, I usually have a feel for the place and then set up accordingly. So yeah, like, but when I images, Mount Dora, they were very different places, even though they were close. So it was good for me to kind of get a feel for that the day before and where my car is going to go and all of that.
Mount Dora is a weird show. There's all sorts of
Yeah.
odd parking lots and whatnot. Yeah.
Well, that's a good bridge. So we've now got our stuff, we've packed, we've gotten to the show. We're now at the event. And you guys have touched on display, but I know David, especially, we were talking about how a lot of times you have this ideal of how you're going to set up your booth and all that, and then you get out and maybe the spots aren't necessarily the way that you would like them to be, and being able to adjust on the fly. Other ideas as far as weight of display, etc., things that you may have learned over the years that you're like, man, I wish I'd known this 20 years ago. It would have saved my back and saved my aggravation a lot.
Oh man, I would say, yeah. First off, setting your thing up and breaking it down a couple times helps. Obviously, if you're thinking about traveling, you've probably done it a few times. But my setup has, I kind of fell into the trap of it getting more and more elaborate until it got to where like, what the heck am I doing? Like, this is really just out of control, elaborate setup, and you're the only one noticing it. But you think that oh man, my booth, blah blah blah, it looks so good, but you're making all these changes that you're the only one that notices them. And so yeah, over the years we've definitely lightened our booth a lot, as far as like the actual weight and the time that it takes to put it up. And that just comes with practice. And you're gonna everybody, I think, errs on the side of heavy, and getting like that weight down as much as you can, and because it's a physical toll, and shows are long, especially on shows where you set up same day and break down same day. Like that's a lot. That's a lot of action. So the
Wait,
lighter
this is
you
a quickie just to throw in there though, that I did the same thing, and I have to say, even today, my assistant was helping me get rid of some old things that I used to do. And you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, I'm saying I think like going off and creating something that's like a menagerie or an oasis or an estuary, those are my words. Bring the driftwood and the coral and the rocks and
For sure. Yeah.
but ultimately I'm at the place you are. I agree that the lighter and the more practical, but I'm coming from a place where I've now can hone in on some of that I did in the past and bring it to something.
And definitely don't compromise your aesthetic. A lot of these shows, especially when you get to the bigger ones, a lot of them start to look super corporate and like everyone's got the same panel and everyone's got the same tent, and that kind of that can be a little blah. But you can find lighter ways to keep your aesthetic alive than 200 fence boards that we used to bring.
Yes.
I would say too that when anybody offers to buy a part of your display, you've overdone it.
We've been there.
Yeah.
I think we all have. We get very creative about these displays, but we have to remember that that piece that's on there is what we want people to acknowledge. So the display has to be fade in the background, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah.
Make sure that the background is something that stays in the background and your piece is the focus.
Yes, that's a great point.
One thing when we're at the shows is one of the things that I often hear from artists who haven't done this before, who are based out of Louisiana, New Orleans areas. They're like, well, my work is so Louisiana specific. I'm not sure how it's going to do in another market. And all y'all's work is specific in different ways. So let's touch on that and maybe also some of the positives, because, you've got every sign and it'll say, Andre Juneau, Scott, Louisiana underneath it. So both maybe there is some issues with taking work that's Louisiana centric in other areas, but also potentially the connections that people can make as far as that's concerned. Andre, you want to start on that?
Yeah, one of the things I remember is one of our former governors said that our largest export is well-educated people to other states. And I find that super, super all the time, where somebody comes up and says, I used to live in Lafayette, I used to live in wherever, Shreveport, and they see your work and they immediately know where I'm from just because it's so Louisiana. And then that gives you an opportunity to connect with them, and then they're going to buy something from their previous home. And almost the more Louisiana it is, the better it sells away from home, because if that person hasn't lived there, they know someone who lived there, they went on vacation, they want to go on vacation, that whole tourist thing, holy cow, that always plays out. People's hearts are open whenever they're on vacation and their pocketbooks, exactly. So thinking you're too Louisiana for the Midwest is not a thing. Go there, try it out.
There are places that are specific to certain media too. There are certain shows. It's like Madison. Go to Madison if you have woodwork. I mean, it is just the place because people in Madison love great woodwork. I'm trying to think of Ocean Springs for pottery. Definitely Ocean Springs for pottery.
Florida for photography.
Yes, all of those things.
Yeah,
I would say that like when we first started, thinking about traveling, one of the reasons I stuck around the Gulf Coast was I thought our work would only resonate on the Gulf Coast, because I thought, because of the colors of our stuff, it's only coastal type things. But, when we started traveling more, I thought you had to have a water type themed for our work to work. But then, when we got out of this area, you started hearing like, oh, this would be good for the mountain house, or this would be good for the lake house, or for the cabin, or, and, your work's going to resonate. I mean, let's just say you make flamingos, right? Like there's someone in every state that loves flamingos. I mean, that's, I think if the work's good enough that you're doing well at shows, you're going to find your crowd, and you'll find where you resonate. And we do really well in Chicago, and I would have never thought that our work would be received in Chicago, but people like colorful stuff, it turns out. Yeah. It makes people happy, and that resonates. So I would say don't get too worried that whatever
I
your medium is, it's,
I feel the opposite about Chicago. My work is not very contemporary, and I find that most people in Chicago like contemporary jewelry. I mean, Chester, you know Chicago better than anybody else. How do you feel about Chicago? Just for fun.
Well, I just think it's one of those estuaries. I mean, it's a place where people, well, one of the great migrations from the South happened there. So you got a lot of people who are from the South who moved there and will feel the energy and the culture. I think that you just have such a range of people. You're talking about an 11 million
yeah.
in the area. So you've got all of it. And then what I was saying is the fact that it's you had a working class that was what do I want to say? They were receiving union wages. So, a fireman in Chicago might be making six figures. We know that's been a challenge here in New Orleans, but so now you have someone who's engaged about things because they work with their hands and they also happen to have resources. So I would actually definitely say Chicago is one of those great art fair. It's a very fertile ground, and once you're there, you're close to areas like Cincinnati, Louisville, in the Midwest, so you can bop in and around. So I think that's something we didn't talk as much about, but I think in terms of coming up with like a game plan of where you're going, it makes sense. June to September is hurricane season, but that also is the beginning of the spring and summer art fair season in the Midwest. So maybe a good time that was one of my original reasons for making those plans, June to September, to be looking outside of our region.
Mm-hmm.
And actually just back to what we were talking about with how the art matches up with the location, I would just say that also be open to letting your work expand and grow with the places that you go. And, so I would say over the years, mine has changed quite a bit and evolved, and partly from the travel and even how I think about it. I think when I'm in New Orleans, people are like, oh, neutral ground, I know what that is. So, going away, it's like, oh, wow, I had no idea when I traveled there that this was, the backstory to it. So,
yeah, that's a great point. I mean, all of us, I think, we're all in the same level of we're making work that we want to sell, and you got to get it in front of people to know what's resonating and what's not. I mean, I've definitely created pieces that I thought were incredible that did not resonate, and we tried them, and then they had to go away because no one's feeling that piece, So I think that's one of the biggest benefits of traveling, is exposing yourself to new people and new audiences and fresh eyes, and really listening to what like people are saying in your booth, and not taking it all super personal, but criticism can go a long way, and you can use it for the benefit and figure out how do you hone your work to like be the most sellable and approachable thing that you can create within your medium or style.
Just to echo that, yeah, when somebody says, hey, can I have that, but just a little different, that's when you're golden. When it's like, oh, I can do that extra thing that's just like what I did, and it opens you up to a whole other thing, but that's not outside of your wheelhouse. And traveling brings a lot of that in my experience.
Well, I think too, seeing new artists, I love the idea of being able to look at the art show. I mean, if you're
You
not.
could walk around
Before
before it opens and talk to everybody,
and see
networking,
things.
and just see what they do.
For example, we were walking around in Houston and someone had this big sculpture, right? And it had things that I use every day in my jewelry. And I thought, I like the way they put that together. So I went home and I made a piece of jewelry like that. So, you never know where the inspiration will come from. But seeing other artwork sometimes helps.
Absolutely.
and seeing other setups.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
I usually
another-
try and make a lap and just look at setups, I mean,
Yes.
'cause, I mean, you learn so much from like, wow, that booth looks awesome. How do you do that? And I'll come back to Tiff and like, oh, I figured out how we're doing this shelf or whatever. Like, it's we're all creative and we're all trying to maximize space in these traveling shows. And some people have some really amazing display ideas alone. Yeah.
Maybe that's a good idea. If you haven't done a whole lot of shows, if there's shows in your area, just go, not being a person as be a participant rather than an exhibitor. And look at everything with the eye of what you think is the best and figure out what would be best for you from what you see.
Mm-hmm. I did that starting out for sure.
I hate to jump subjects again, but you should have a dolly.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Something you could bring with you.
Yeah, we were talking about the difference of back in the day, when I was younger, I was excited about to say, oh, you got a Corvette or you got this kind of car. And now it's like, oh man, look at that one with those wheels, the truck dolly. But how would I get that in my minivan? That's the other thing.
I'm very proud of my
I was
dolly.
looking at other people's dollies going, oh man, that thing is awesome.
Right. Yep.
Yes.
The places we end up. Okay, so we've done the show. It's been good. Maybe it hasn't been, and we talked about that sometimes it is kind of a roll of the dice. Oftentimes it's a roll of the dice. Weather, and nothing anyone can do about that. Let's assume that things went pretty well for the sake of this conversation. So what then? Especially if I've gone to a new market. I've been in Poughkeepsie. I've never been in Poughkeepsie before, but I've done pretty well. I get back to New Orleans. What do I do then? Is there information I'm collecting? Is there outreach I'm doing? What's next?
That seems like a Tiffany question.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I will just be the first to admit we don't do this very well. We don't have sign up sheet, like a sign in or email blast or any of those things. So I'll start just by admitting that. I think everybody thinks they have to have it, but we actually don't. What we do have is in our booth at the show, we have QR codes that bring you right to our Instagram and to our website. So we just encourage people to just take that picture then, like not worry about follow-up, like do it right here, right now. And so we have that. We have business cards, small cards from Moo, the company MOO, Moo, where it's image-based. So all of our work is on those cards. And then we have postcards that describe all of our work that we hand out. That are available to people. But post evaluation for the shows, we do kind of just a financial analysis of the show. Was it worth it? Like, what were the conditions? And you can't just do one show and say write it off, right? Like maybe the weather was bad that year and it's typically a good show, so we kind of take all those things into consideration. What was the crowd size like? Does our work fit? We've done shows before where our work just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit what people are looking for, and it's no hard feelings, right? It's just the way it is. So we kind of evaluate all of those things. We talk about the interests of the crowd, like were people interested in it? Were our prices too high? I mean, one of the things, Kina, I think that was you. Thanks for the question. Our prices range from $25 to $2,500. So we have a wide range of prices for everyone. I mean, our goal is to have something for everyone, to start collectors at a $25 price point and over the years build that to whatever works for them. So we do have this wide variety of price points. And then we use the Square POS, a point of service. We can use it on our phones. We have an iPad that we do everything with, and you can run all these reports. So super simple. It sounds like I'm doing a whole lot of number crunching, but I'm not. I'm simply running a report on Square and then comparing it to previous years. So that is kind of the post evaluation, and we decide if we're going to do something again.
Other people?
I also don't do the best job, but what I do is I keep an iOS notes on my phone that basically begins with show name, date, and then below that I'll throw anything that's super pertinent, like rained all day Saturday, or was during a Saints game, or it's usually 2 sentences, if that. And then I'll revert to square and look at the sales when I make a decision the next time and go, yeah, the sales were crap, but it rained one day, or there was a Saint game, whatever happened to be. And then you make a call from that. That's about the level of post for me.
And I
Chester,
think
what do you say?
one of the things that we need to throw in here is that sometimes you're on a circuit of shows, like you're doing 2 or 3 in an area, and maybe one was the one you were expecting to be like the main carry the load financially, and maybe something else is, I'm thinking of when I went to Minnesota and I went to the Goose Bear Falls and did some hiking and that kind of thing, and the money was land yacht. So I was just thinking also in terms of like that a lot of these things are changing and fluid, like with Jazz Fest going cashless, my little QR code that connects with people. But I definitely have like a customer card that if I feel like this person is really my people, then I'm building community with Instagram, with meeting them in person, and this is the stuff where I really want to hone in. So I may only have 5 of these cards that come from a show, but I know, hey, these were important people to reconnect with. And sometimes, by the way, these are people that you can end up staying with, that become influencers in your community, that let other people know. And so, I mean, I like that idea that Tiffany had in terms of, the social media ads and that kind of thing. You have to look at it that you're getting the legal right to be at the show. Now, what are you going to do to get your customers there? Because you will know who they are better than anybody else.
Excellent. So we've hit our Q&A portion, and we've already seen some of those populate. We have a question from Matt here, and Andre, you referenced this a little bit, but Matt says, I've seen people assess their show as a multiple of booth fees, like 3 to 5 times. I think you said 10 times.
10 times what you're hoping for. That's mostly what works out over the years, assuming it doesn't rain or something crazy doesn't happen. That's what you should hope for. It does creep more like 20% lately, though.
Yeah. And I've heard that number too. Do y'all have like a number that you go, if my rent's $200, I want to at least gross 2,000, so it's 10 times rent, or if it's 2,000, it's 20,000, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, I want to say a few things here. One of the things is that I get this question a lot, and I feel like, especially in the moment at the shows, just kind of like take it in, enjoy it, connect with the people. Don't get in your head about your expectations. Just be in the now with that. Because later on, who knows? I mean, I've had a customer just come yesterday, and he was from a show that I didn't think was particularly good, but suddenly he changed the trajectory a little bit on that. And yeah, I'm sorry. What really, yeah, go ahead.
Reports after the show are oftentimes more valid than the reports during the shows. Joshua Lee told me a joke that I love. It's how many artists does it take to change a light bulb? And he says 50. I was like, oh, why? Well, 1 to change the light bulb and 49 to say how much brighter it was last year. And that's because after the show, you get to add up all the things. And during the show, you're like, boy, this seems like it's slow. So look at the end. Like Chester said, stay in the moment. Don't worry about what's happening. At the end, look and see how you did.
Yeah, we definitely go ahead, Tiff.
I just want to echo that. This is so important. I know I probably sound like I just do numbers all day, but we do not look at our square report at all during a show.
No.
At all. It crushes your vibe, it crushes your mood, it drops the energy in your space, and that is not how we want to show up for ourselves nor or for anybody else that might be interested in buying something. So we do not look at any numbers throughout the day at all.
One number that I really like from Square that shows you when you sell the most stuff. And you don't really notice it during the daytime, but ours is usually anywhere from 11 to 2. So during that period of time, make sure that you've already eaten or have been ready or have your drinks or don't leave your booth. That's the main thing. Make sure you're there. We have friends a lot of times who go to a show and you go by, because there's 2 of us, so one of us can roam around, and they're not in their booth. Now, how can you sell anything if you're not there? That's pretty major.
I would say just a quick little thing on that, and maybe going back to earlier, something that we were late to the game on, but it's been a changer for us is just lighting. Figure out a way to have decent lighting.
Yes.
We have sold more after closing time at some shows strictly because we had a light and people were still there and everybody was on their way out and your boots lit up and, oh, let's go check that out. So that's something to think about. It's really not expensive, especially now with lithium batteries and all that stuff. You can get some good light for pretty cheap. And it's something I overlooked for years, and it's really been a game changer for
Well,
us.
the technology has really evolved with the
Yeah.
electricity and
Yep. So for starting out, I wish someone would have told me that early. Because it's been a game changer.
It used to be the
It-
biggest hassle
it
to
was
get
a lot harder.
electricity to booths from
Yeah.
a promoter's viewpoint. This was our absolute white whale we couldn't figure out. We did have a question from Mary about festival taxes. Now, I'd hope that the show promoter provides that information, but is there any other ideas, tips, or things you should look out for as far as that's concerned, especially if you're in a new market?
Well, one thing is Google to find out what the sales tax in the area is first. Number 1, put it in your square. Number 2, an hour before the show or whenever you do it, so you have the correct amount. Show promoter usually has about 1 paragraph telling you
Who to pay,
who to pay.
or the form,
Or the
hopefully,
form,
ideally.
mostly it's digital now, so yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to buy sales, that's another thing, sales tax licenses in
Yeah.
different states. I know if you go to Ohio, you have to purchase a license prior to making a
Or
sale.
Tuscaloosa,
Or
or
Alabama, or, there's lots of ones, different ones, so that should be notification from the festival,
it really should.
because it takes time to get that license.
Excellent. Go
And I
ahead.
would just add to that, Jean, one of the things you have to do is got to make sure you do it on time. Sometimes you get back from a show, you're super excited, and then you are on to the next, and you have to
Yeah.
make sure you complete the tax most of them are within 10 days. So you have to make sure you pay that. And then other times, other states, you have to file quarterly, even if you don't do shows quarterly. Even if you're reporting 0, you still have to report a 0, or you have to pay a fine for that. So it is like, it's just part of Dave unloads the car and I pay the taxes. Like, that's kind of how we do it when we get home.
Dave, you had mentioned lighting, and we do have a question on lighting from Princess, and she asks, what would y'all say is the best portable power source?
I use Goal Zero. That's just the one that I use, and I love it. It's been great for me.
I'm still carrying around lead acid batteries because it doubles as a weight. And I carry 3 weights plus a big heavy car battery, and that works out just the same as the weight would. It's cheaper.
Yeah,
That's super nice, and easy to carry to the room and easier to charge and manage. So either way.
yeah, I did the Maritime battery thing for a long time, and they're not light. And again, they do work as weights for sure. But the Goal Zero for us, and there's many brands. I'm not trying to hawk Goal Zero, but it's been good for us.
Yeah.
and I was just saying in between, I have the Jackery. So, and that's something you could sort of build from in terms of finances, that the Jackery 300, and then maybe get 2 or 3 different ones.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. All right, guys. I think we've pretty much hit the end. If there's any more questions, type in the chat box, but I want to give each one of y'all a final moment to cover anything we didn't cover, or give your best regards. Chester, we started with you in the beginning. Let's start with you in the end. Bring us on home a little bit.
Okay, so if you're looking at this webinar today, or 1,000 years into the future, this is a place where you can learn to lose weight. You can learn to fish. You can learn, all kinds of things. And I mean, I say that sort of lightly, but literally this last trip, I shared a space with another artist, Calvin, and we ended up in Riviera Beach at an Airbnb, and it was fabulous. He caught the fish, I ate the fish, but even, thinking of being at a certain age and thinking, okay, how do you maintain yourself? And so, we did a couple walks together. I noticed he had the castor oil. I said, oh, I'm probably not going to do that, but and then just in terms of when you communicate with people, I think that your world just gets way bigger when you're doing shows, and you have more to talk about than just the post office and Rouse's. So I'd say get on out there and do your thing.
I love it. Bergeron.
Yeah, I would say, obviously, kind of echoing what Chester said, somebody told me when I was starting out that, you've got to, as an artist, you have to kind of protect your eye, is the way they framed it. And, when you're only in one small market or one small region, you're only seeing, what's selling in that small market in that region. And everything you see is going to affect you. So when you get to these other shows, like what everyone else here said, take time to walk around, see the other art, let that all kind of get into your head, and it's really going to open your world up a lot. Just meeting other people, the networking aspect, and being in a different environment, seeing what people are into and whatnot, and I would definitely hammer on the networking aspect. Meet your neighbors, exchange cards, follow them on the socials, and you make great friendships, and we're all in this traveling circus together. So none of us want to break down, but if you ever do, you might know, hey, I know 2 other people going to this show off the top of my head. I can reach out to them and like, dude, where do I get my car fixed? In middle of nowhere, Ohio, right? So networking, and meet your neighbors and talk to each other. That's what I would say.
I would just add to that, David, that the world needs us, the creatives, this new fresh breath, this life. So the world needs to see this, see art, and be exposed to it. So it's a need. And this is a community. And like Dave said, we are so fortunate to be part of this community. We have great, dear friends. I mean, I've watched Chester's boys grow up. I mean, it's just been wonderful. And so reach out. I'm happy to share any experiences, anything with everyone, because we want everybody to be successful. So reach out, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tiffany. Juneau's.
Think about what you want more of. We went to a show recently in Fort Myers, about 75%, to see my godson's other grandparents, and got to stay with them. And if you have a show that you can go to where you can stay on the beach for free, start there. It was delightful. I highly recommend that. Be super nice to your neighbors. I can't tell you how far that's going to get you when you're broken down in someplace else, and then they'll see you or send somebody else to you or tell you that something else was useful. They might run a show or be on a board or just point you in the right direction. And have fun, be mindful, think about all the other people there and see what they do, and you'll learn tons from all of them. Don't be afraid to ask them for help, me included.
I agree. I think, be a tourist. and let that tourism expand your life. Go see museums, you know, you're in a different place. I don't care, go to the zoo, have a great time, just enjoy all the things that you would do if you were in Paris. You know, just whatever place you go to, make it a little Paris and find the best places and the cool things to do. And to me, I think the best shows are in the places where the people are the nicest. And somehow or another, that makes it fun to go to. The people that are walking around the show are the ones who are the entertainment for me. They're entertaining me. And the other thing I was gonna say is let people take pictures of your work and let them remember you, because you'll be back next year, and it's not that you'll sell it this year. It might take you 5 years to sell that piece, but ultimately they'll come back and buy it from you.
Letting people take pictures works super good for me. I always figure if somebody's gonna steal your design, they're gonna buy one and copy it like
It's
that.
cheaper.
Yeah,
Let them try. You know?
yeah, exactly. Don't worry about that.
Do not worry about it. Okay, well, this has been great, guys. I cannot thank you all enough, our esteemed panel, for joining us. Thank you to everyone who joined us and for your great questions as well. We will be posting this to our website, elanola.org, and to our YouTube feed. Give me a few days to get that out there, and I'm going to send out an evaluation to everybody to let us know what you want to hear next. I thought this was great, and we want to see what else we can do that sort of keeps this momentum going. So until then, thanks all of y'all, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks for having us, Jean.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks, everybody. Have fun.